This is one more story of a boy named Marcos, who grew up with the deep pain of having been abandoned by his father, that man who decided to leave his life far away. As time passed, the pain of abandonment was replaced by hatred and desire for revenge. It was so that with the help of some childhood friends, they launched a plan that consisted of making him pay for all the damage that his abandonment had caused him. It took them a few years to locate him, for the boy's fortune. He made an alliance with his father's former enemies, that man called Jamie. He had 4 new children, 3 girls and a boy. They constantly harassed Jamie and blackmailed him with threats. The plan was going as he had dreamed of. Little by little, more people were interested in the band. They had many financial resources, technological knowledge, people, money, different types of transportation. One afternoon, Jamie's second daughter, named Clara, saw them passing by outside her house. When Marcos saw the girl, she seemed the most similar to her father. That same day, Marcos gathered his men and decided to destroy her. Clara's life in revenge for her father. The ideas did not take long to arrive, but one was chosen. They would look for a woman with similar characteristics to the girl to pretend to be her. They would make her believe that she was losing her mind. For Clara, life in the middle of 2006 at the age of 12 was fairly normal. She liked to collect frogs and take care of her numerous cats, while her curly hair was always disheveled. That year, there were many changes. She noticed that her father arrived every day looking grumpy and worried, while he noticed that some people were constantly hanging around his house. One afternoon, while he was out for a walk, he saw a bald man taking a photo of him from a car. He didn't know what was happening, but it was evident that something was happening. When 2007 arrived, Clara just wanted to enjoy herself with her classmates. She had so many dreams that she would not see come true in that cold year. It was one April when she saw a woman dressed in the same way as her pass in front of her eyes. She even had the same bow in her hair, just as she was wearing it, dazed and in shock. She did not know what was happening. As the months passed, everything got worse for her. Her school performance was very poor. No. She had the courage to get up and study, since every time she left the house, many men harassed her in the street. Such a situation, she considerably neglected her studies. The few times she attended classes, her teachers and classmates reproached her for her poor school performance. So many things were happening that it was very difficult for her to assimilate them all. In the afternoons when she got home, she wrote in her diary everything she couldn't tell anyone, everything she had seen and what she saw daily to be able to put together the pieces of that great puzzle. She noticed some people walking by outside her house shouting very personal hints about her appearance and what she said about her. She was only 13 years old. She remembered what life was like just a few years ago, how dreamy she was. She loved playing with her brothers, games at school. None of that was left anymore, and it hurt her a lot. Marcos and everyone in the band was beginning to see results. The girls seemed to not be able to last another year, so they celebrated and everyone congratulated each other while proposing new ideas, giving silent but very effective blows. Helplessness grew in her heart. She longed for someone to notice her and help her. When everyone in her house, each of her, was sleeping, she silently cried until she fell asleep. There were many nights in which she wanted to sleep, for several days. After a few days, her mother, worried about her, read Clara's diary and could not believe everything that was written there. She was so painful to see that her daughter's mental health was deteriorating. She confessed to Clara that she had read her daily and was willing to help her while trying to comfort the girl. She told in that newspaper about a woman similar to her who acted flirtatiously in front of other men, and they confused her with her on the street. When she saw her, they made strange sounds with their mouths, a situation that made her very uncomfortable. Also from other men who, they followed them in the cars where she went. Her parents, worried about her, were trying to motivate her daughter to get ahead, while they noticed a very sad face on her daughter. She had even neglected her personal hygiene and was in danger of failing the school year. Deep down, she knew that every piece of advice they gave her was correct. At that moment, she doubted her own sanity and cried bitterly for long minutes. At that moment, she ran to the patio where there was a small lemon tree. She looked at the tree. heaven and visited the God of her childhood, she had grown up hearing great fear. She had grown up hearing great feats about him. She clung to the hope that all of that would one day pass. A few years passed. The harassment continued in the same way as before, but she still had dreams and goals to fulfill. Despite everything, she tried to normalize everything and continue with her life, make new friends, and continue with her studies despite everything difficult. Over the years, the harassment reached her social networks. It was so painful for her to distance herself from many people for fear of distrusting. When she registered on applications to meet new people, the boys told her that with girls like her, they were not good for serious things, and they were very rude even without knowing her. When she left home, the situation was not very different. She usually saw them passing by with horror masks in the passenger seats with metal-style songs. They looked at her with a lot of hatred. Every year, new people agreed to be part of the band. This made her personal life even more difficult in her studies, her work, her friends, and the projects she undertook. Although she tried to confront them and defend herself in her own way, it didn't work. That feeling of helplessness resurfaced inside her. However, she was still standing. There was still hope and strength to fulfill dreams, and she tried to hold on to them. For every time the problems were so distressing, she looked at the sky. She kept faith that one day, the night would end. She kept faith that her eyes would see a dawn. Her envy and hatred for her intensified even more as the years went by. They had invested a lot of money, energy, and time, and they still did not achieve what they had planned. Time continued, and Clara, at 26 years of age, found out about her father's son when reading a letter that he had sent to Jaime. In that letter, he wrote about threats and that he would make her pay for all the damage that he had caused. Clara, at that moment, could finally see the truth of everything that had happened. She felt a lot of anger, and the desire for revenge grew inside her. She remembered all the humiliations, all the uncomfortable moments. So much causeless hatred towards her, so much pain. All those moments when she tried to defend herself and it was in vain. She had lost friends, suitors, job opportunities. They had ruined her reputation, and they had been determined to ruin her life. In a moment of deep pain when she saw so many broken dreams, she looked at the window, that window in which she always looked at the sky, and she reflected that even though they tried to take everything from her, they never took away her faith, that faith that imposed her. To believe in the God who is always there, that God who took her hand when she seemed to fall, that God who gave her strength when she could no longer continue, that God who was her everything when she had no one, that God who prevented her from being destroyed, that God who always arrived just in time with a hug and who comforted her heart when she cried on those long cold nights alone. As she remembered all the paths she had traveled, she understood that she was never alone. It was no longer important to take revenge. It was no longer important to defend herself. She had gained a story to tell. She forgave the child who grew up abandoned and remembered the eyes full of pain and resentment that she saw years ago. True weakness is succumbing to evil. Now, I am 30 years old, and I have told very briefly everything I have experienced in these almost 20 years. It is my true story, and I have shared it with you, opening my heart with total sincerity.